Dr. Thornton smiled at the ultrasound screen and said those words I'll never forget. This baby has those distinctive Hartwell green eyes, just like Pastor Trevor. My wife's hand went rigid in mine. The monitor's rhythmic beeping suddenly sounded deafening. I looked at Catherine, Kate, sitting beside me in that sterile examination room, her belly round beneath the paper gown. Her face had gone completely still, not surprised, still. "What did you just say?" I managed to get the words out. Dr. Thornton laughed, that easy professional laugh doctors use when they've said something they think is charming. "Oh, you know, genetics are fascinating, the way eye color carries through families." She pointed at the grainy image on the screen. "See here? Already forming. Those Hartwell genes are strong." Kate changed the subject so fast I almost missed it. Almost. "When can we schedule the next appointment?" she asked, her voice perfectly steady. Too steady. I sat there, my hand still holding hers, and felt the first crack appear in 20 years of marriage. Because Trevor Hartwell wasn't family. Trevor Hartwell was my best friend, my pastor, the man who'd stood beside me as best man at our wedding 22 years ago, the man who'd baptized our daughter Sophia when she was born, and now, apparently, the man whose green eyes my wife's baby was going to have. The drive home was quiet. Charleston traffic hummed around us, fall sunshine streaming through the windshield. Kate turned on the radio. Classical music filled the car. She always loved classical music. I'd never really listened to it before, but now every violin stroke sounded like a warning. "That was strange," I said finally. "What Dr. Thornton said." Kate didn't look at me. "What was?" "About Trevor's eyes." "Oh." She waved a hand dismissively. "You know Lisa, she's always making those observations. Remember when she said Sophia had your mother's nose? Your mother's been dead since you were 15. It was a good deflection, logical. But her hand had gone rigid in mine. That moment kept replaying in my head. The way her entire body had tensed. Not surprise, recognition. I pulled into our driveway. Our house, the one we'd bought 12 years ago, the one with the front porch I'd rebuilt with my own hands, suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else. Kate got out, grabbed her purse, walked inside. I sat in the car for another minute, hands on the steering wheel, trying to remember how to breathe normally. My phone buzzed. A text from Trevor. "Council meeting tonight at 7, budget review. You're still coming, right?" I was the church's financial administrator. Head deacon. I'd held that position for 8 years. Grace Lutheran Church had been my family longer than I could remember, ever since my father died when I was 15, and the congregation wrapped around me like a blanket. I texted back, "I'll be there." What else could I say? That evening, I sat alone in my church office, the door locked. The building was quiet. Wednesday evening service wouldn't start for another 2 hours. I'd come early, told Kate I needed to finish the quarterly budget review before the council meeting. I wasn't reviewing the budget. I was staring at the leather-bound church ledger on my desk. Burgundy leather, gold-embossed cross on the cover, 14 by 10 inches. The binding cracked when you opened it. That sound like a door opening onto secrets. My father had kept this ledger before me. Now I did. The pages were heavy stock, cream-colored, with blue grid lines that had faded to gray in the older entries. It smelled like church basements and paper that's absorbed decades of dust. Each page whispered when you turned it, a sound I usually found comforting. Tonight, nothing was comforting. I'd pulled the third quarter expenses, just routine review. That's when I saw it. Line, item 247, counseling retreat, youth leadership development, date, April 2025, amount, $4,800. You know me, I keep every receipt. It's what I do. It's who I am. I'd built my entire career, my entire reputation, on being meticulous with details. The church trusted me with a $2 million annual budget because I caught every discrepancy, every misplaced decimal point. So, when I saw $4,800 for a counseling retreat, I did what I always do. I cross-referenced. I pulled up the retreat roster. 12 attendees. Kate had attended. She was the youth director after all. Trevor had led it as senior pastor. 2 days at a conference center in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Then I pulled the credit card statement. Hotel room, singular, not rooms, plural. One charge, Mountain View Lodge, Suite 412. King bed. My hands started shaking. I set down the ledger carefully, precisely, the way I set down everything in my life. Carefully, precisely, by the rules. I pulled up the retreat roster again, counted the names, 12 attendees. Then I pulled the hotel reservations. 6 rooms. Should have been 6 rooms, but there were only 5. And the 6th charge, Suite 412, was on the church credit card, the one Trevor had access to, the one I'd never questioned because pastors don't lie about counseling retreats. Best friends don't lie about counseling retreats. I sat back in my chair. The leather squeaked. I'd sat in this chair 1,000 times, reviewed this ledger 1,000 times. I kept every receipt, every single one, and the receipts were telling me a story I didn't want to hear. I pulled April from the calendar, cross-referenced Kate's schedule. The retreat had been April 15th and 17th. I'd been at a church conference in Atlanta those 3 days, diocese-level meetings. I'd even texted Kate from the airport, "Have a great retreat, love. See you Sunday." She'd texted back, "Miss you already." And then she'd driven to the mountains with Trevor and checked into Suite 412. The church bells rang 6 o'clock. The sound echoed through the empty building, that deep bronze note that usually made me think of tradition, of continuity, of faith. Tonight it sounded like a funeral toll. I closed the ledger. The crack of the binding closing sounded too loud in the quiet office. By the time I got home, Sophia was there. My daughter, 19 years old, home from Clemson for a long weekend. She was sitting at the kitchen table with Kate, laughing about something, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, the way she'd worn it since middle school. "Dad!" She jumped up, hugged me. She smelled like the vanilla perfume she'd been wearing since she was 16. "I brought the gown to show you." "The gown?" Sophia practically bounced to the living room and came back with a cedar box. The kind of box that's been in families for generations, passed down like a whisper. She opened it carefully, and the smell of cedar and age wafted out. Inside, wrapped in yellowed tissue paper, was the baptismal gown. Antique white silk with hand-tatted lace at the collar. 150 years old. My great-great-grandmother had made it by hand, and every Brennan baby since then had worn it. My father, me, Sophia. 4 generations have worn this, Daddy. Sophia spread the silk on the kitchen table. It whispered as she moved it, that soft sound of old fabric holding old promises. Now your baby, and someday my baby's. The lace felt delicate as spiderweb under my fingertips, fragile, like everything else in my life right now. Kate stood by the stove, stirring something that smelled like her mother's beef stew recipe. She wasn't looking at me. She was very deliberately not looking at me. "Your babies will wear it, sweetheart," I said to Sophia. My voice didn't sound like my own. "That's what matters. I can't wait to see the baby in it." Sophia refolded the gown with the reverence you give to holy things. "Mom says November 15th, right? 3 more weeks. 3 weeks until my wife gave birth to a child who had Trevor Hartwell's distinctive green eyes." "That's right," I said. Sophia looked at me, her head tilted. "Dad, you okay? You seem just tired, sweetheart. Long day." Kate set plates on the table. "Sophia, tell your father about your organic chemistry exam." And Sophia did. She talked about molecular structures and lab work and her study group, and I nodded in all the right places. I smiled. I ate beef stew that tasted like cardboard in my mouth. I played the role of attentive father, supportive husband. Halfway through dinner, Sophia said something that made the fork freeze in my hand. "Oh, I forgot to tell you, Mom. I saw Uncle Trevor at your ultrasound appointment last week." Kate's fork clattered against her plate. The sound was too loud in the quiet kitchen. "He was at the hospital blessing the new medical wing," Kate said smoothly. "Remember? The dedication ceremony." "Oh, right," Sophia smiled. "He gave me a hug, told me to study hard." I set down my fork carefully, very carefully. "The medical wing dedication was in August, Kate. 2 months ago. I was there." Silence. Sophia looked between us, confusion creeping into her eyes. Did I get that wrong?" "You must have seen him at the hospital for something else," Kate said. Her voice had that edge now, that warning tone I'd learned over 20 years. "Trevor's there all the time for pastoral visits." "Yeah," Sophia said slowly. "That must be it." But I'd seen it, that fraction of a second when Sophia had wondered if her mother was lying, that crack in the foundation. After dinner, Sophia went upstairs to study. Kate loaded the dishwasher, her back to me. The medical wing dedication was in August, I said quietly. I know when it was. So, why was Trevor at your ultrasound? Kate turned, and her face was perfectly calm. 22 years of marriage, and I'd never seen her face this calm, this empty. He wasn't at my ultrasound, Marcus. Sophia got confused. She saw him at the hospital. That's all? That's all. Yes. She closed the dishwasher, pressed the button. The rush of water filled the kitchen. That's all. I stood there, looking at my wife across the kitchen, where we'd shared 10,000 meals, and I realized I didn't know her at all. Maybe I never had. I walked out, drove, didn't know where I was going until I pulled into the Grace Lutheran parking lot and sat there, staring at the building where I'd poured 27 years of my life. The building where Trevor preached every Sunday about faithfulness, about integrity, about walking in the light. The building where I was going to Wednesday evening service in 30 minutes and pretend everything was fine. If you've ever smiled through a family dinner while your world was falling apart, while you knew something was wrong but couldn't say it yet, you understand what I did next. At midnight, everyone in my house was asleep. I sat at my computer in the home office, door locked, and opened a private browsing window. Home Gene Advanced Paternity Kit. Next day shipping if ordered before 1 a.m. The website was clinical, professional, white and teal design, the colors of medical certainty. Accurate results in 3 to 5 business days. Over 99% accuracy, completely confidential. I clicked through the ordering process like a man in a dream, or a nightmare. I wasn't sure which anymore. Cotton swabs in sealed plastic tubes. Collect sample from inside of cheek. Mail in prepaid envelope. Wait. My credit card number went into the form. Shipping address, Grace Lutheran Church, attention, Marcus Brennan, financial office. I couldn't risk Kate finding the package at home. 3-day shipping. I paid extra. The confirmation email arrived. Estimated delivery, Wednesday, October 25th. Wednesday. The day we had evening service. I closed the laptop. Sat in the dark office. My father's silver cross pendant heavy against my chest. He'd worn this cross for 40 years. Through his own hard truths, through raising me alone after my mother left, through the cancer that killed him when I was 15. I touched it now, and it was cold, so cold. The cross had a Celtic design, intricate knotwork with no beginning and no end. Just continuous loops, like faith, like trust, like all the things I thought I understood about my life. God doesn't test us, my father used to say. People do. I'd thought he was being cynical. Now I understood he was being realistic. I had to collect the sample without Kate knowing. I had to mail it. I had to wait. And then I had to see if the DNA would tell me what I already knew in my bones. That the baby growing inside my wife, the baby I'd been preparing to love, to raise, to baptize in that 150-year-old gown, wasn't mine. And that my best friend, my pastor, the man I'd trusted with my faith and my family, had been lying to me for at least as long as it takes to create a child. The collection kit would arrive Wednesday. I'd have to hide it from Kate. I'd have to hide everything. Wednesday evening service always started at 7. 300 people usually attended midweek. Our church was large for Charleston, 500 members total, and people took their Wednesday worship seriously. I'd been in my office since noon, avoiding going home. The DNA kit had arrived at 10 a.m. via overnight courier. I'd signed for it. Jennifer, our church secretary, had brought it to my office with a raised eyebrow, but no questions. That's why I loved Jennifer. She minded her own business. The kit sat in my desk drawer now. White and teal box, 8 inches by 6 inches. Inside, 2 cotton swabs and sealed plastic tubes. Instruction booklet. Prepaid return envelope. I'd collected my sample in the church bathroom, feeling like a criminal. The swab had scraped against the inside of my cheek, and I'd sealed it in the tube labeled, Alleged Father. That's what the form called me, alleged. Kate's sample I'd collected last night while she slept. She always slept deeply in her 3rd trimester. I'd learned that when she was pregnant with Sophia. I'd touched the swab to the inside of her cheek so gently she hadn't even stirred. Now both tubes were in the prepaid envelope, sealed, ready to mail. I'd drop it in the mailbox after service. 3 to 5 business days for results. Maybe by Monday. Maybe by Monday I'd know for certain that my entire life was a lie. The church was filling up. I could hear voices in the sanctuary. the soft murmur of people greeting each other, the rustle of programs being picked up. The organ was playing. Eleanor Hartwell, Trevor's wife, was the church organist. Had been for 15 years. I wondered if Eleanor knew, if she'd suspected, if she'd been as blind as me. I stood at my office window, looking out at the parking lot. Saw Trevor's silver Lexus pull in. He got out, tall and confident in his pastor's robes, and walked toward the building. Saw Kate's Honda arrive 10 minutes later. She was wearing the maternity dress I'd bought her last month, navy blue with white flowers. They didn't look at each other in the parking lot. They were professionals. My phone buzzed, a text from the courier service. Package out for delivery, Marcus Brennan, Grace Lutheran Church. I looked at the text, looked at the timestamp. 6:47 p.m. Delivery estimated 7:15 p.m. Service started at 7. I'd be in the sanctuary. But packages for the church office came to the side entrance, and someone would sign for them. Probably Jennifer. And Jennifer would bring it to me. During service. I felt something like panic rising in my chest. This was stupid. I should have scheduled the delivery for tomorrow. Should have waited. Should have, but I hadn't. And now I was going to receive my DNA test results in the middle of Wednesday evening worship, with Trevor preaching and Kate sitting in the front pew where she always sat, and 300 witnesses watching me open an envelope that would either save my marriage or destroy it. I touched my father's cross. Cold metal. Continuous loops. God doesn't test us. People do. I walked into the sanctuary. Trevor was already at the pulpit when I slid into my usual seat. Third row, aisle, right side. The seat where I'd sat for 15 years, where I'd watched my daughter grow up in the pew beside me, where I'd listened to 1,000 sermons about faith and family and walking in the light of truth. Tonight's sermon was about faithfulness. Of course it was. And when we make promises before God, Trevor was saying, his voice carrying to every corner of the sanctuary, we're not just making promises to each other. We're making promises to the divine. His voice was rich, warm, practiced. Trevor had always been an exceptional speaker. That's why the congregation loved him. That's why they'd given him a standing ovation when he was called to Grace Lutheran 8 years ago. That's why I'd stood up and clapped harder than anyone. My best friend, finally home. Finally where he belonged. Faithfulness, Trevor continued, isn't just about keeping our word when it's convenient. It's about keeping our word when it costs us something. Kate sat in the front pew. I could see the back of her head, dark hair pulled up in a clip. Her shoulders were relaxed. She was listening to Trevor preach about faithfulness, and her shoulders were completely relaxed. The organ hummed. Eleanor Hartwell's hands moved across the keys, providing soft background music for Trevor's words. Did Eleanor know? Had Trevor told his own wife about the affair? Or were there 2 marriages being destroyed here, not just mine? I touched the silver cross at my throat. My father's cross. He'd worn it through his own wife's betrayal. My mother had left him when I was 12, run off with an insurance salesman from Colombia. My father had worn this cross and raised me alone and never once badmouthed her to me. Be better than the people who hurt you, he'd told me once. Don't let them make you small. Trevor's sermon continued. The words washed over me like water. Faithfulness, commitment, sacred vows. Every word was a knife. The sanctuary door opened. Jennifer Martinez slipped in, holding a FedEx envelope, thin white envelope. She caught my eye, walked down the side aisle toward me. My heart started hammering. No, not now, not yet. I wasn't ready. But Jennifer was already beside my pew, leaning down, whispering, "This just came for you." Said urgent, needed signature. I looked at the envelope, clinical white paper, Home Gene Laboratories logo in the corner, embossed. You could trace it with your fingertip. Feel the raised letters. "Thank you," I whispered back. Jennifer nodded and slipped away. The envelope sat in my lap. Trevor was still preaching. Kate was still sitting in the front pew. 150 people surrounded me, singing quietly along with Eleanor's organ music, and I held in my hands the biological truth of my entire future. The envelope was thin. That's what struck me. Medical-grade paper, but thin, like it knew it didn't need to be heavy to destroy a life. My hands shook as I tore it open. The sound was too loud. The ripping of paper, too loud in the sacred hush of the sanctuary. A few people glanced at me. I ducked my head, pretended to be looking at a hymnal. Inside, a single sheet. White paper, the clinic's letterhead. And there, in the middle of medical jargon, one section highlighted. Paternity test results. Alleged father, Marcus David Brennan. Child, unborn, maternal sample provided. Probability of paternity, around 0%. Conclusion, Marcus David Brennan is excluded as the biological father, and below that, in smaller print, DNA profile suggests alternative paternity. Recommend additional testing if alternative alleged father is available. The paper crinkled too loud. 99.97%. That's what they meant by excluded. Medical certainty, not a doubt, not a question, absolute biological fact. Trevor was mid-sermon. His voice filled the sanctuary. And when we stand before God, we must ask ourselves, have we been faithful? Have we kept our promises? The words echoed off the vaulted ceiling. Kate sat in the front pew, one hand resting on her belly. I had to stand up in 60 seconds. It was my role as deacon. I served communion with Trevor every Wednesday. We stood together at the altar, broke bread together, offered wine together. The body of Christ, the blood of Christ. The paper in my hand said 0.00%, excluded, not yours. I couldn't breathe. The sanctuary felt too small, too hot, too full of people who trusted me to be steady, reliable Marcus, the one who kept every receipt, the one who never made mistakes, the one who served communion with a smile and made sure the church budget balanced and raised his daughter to love Jesus, the one whose wife was carrying another man's child. And Trevor, my best friend, my pastor, was wrapping up his sermon with a prayer. Lord, help us to walk in faithfulness. Help us to honor our promises. Help us to be worthy of the trust others place in us. 300 people said, Amen. I stood up. My legs felt like water. The DNA results were still in my hand. I folded them quickly, shoved them in my pocket. Walked to the altar on autopilot. Trevor stood beside me. He smiled at me, that warm pastor smile, the one that made congregants trust him, the one that made children run to him after service, the one that had made me trust him for 20 years. Body of Christ, Trevor said, handing me the communion bread. Broken for you. I took the plate. My hands were shaking so badly the bread rattled. Kate was the first person in line. She knelt at the altar rail, her belly round beneath her dress, her eyes closed in prayer. I walked to her, held out the bread. Body of Christ, I said. My voice came from somewhere far away. Broken for you. She took the bread, looked up at me, and for just a fraction of a second, I saw it in her eyes. She knew. She knew I knew. Then she closed her eyes and ate the communion bread, and I moved on to the next person and the next and the next, serving the body of Christ, while my own body felt like it was falling apart from the inside out. I didn't sleep that night, didn't even try. I sat in my home office with the DNA results spread on my desk, reading them over and over like the words might change if I stared long enough. They didn't change. At 6 a.m., I texted Trevor. Need to talk. Your office. 8 a.m., private. He texted back immediately. Everything okay? I didn't answer. Trevor's office was on the second floor of the church, overlooking the gardens where we held Easter sunrise services. I'd been in this office 100 times. Budget meetings, counseling sessions, planning church events. The walls were lined with theology books, framed degrees from seminary, photos of Trevor with church members at baptisms and weddings. There was a photo of Trevor and me on his desk, taken 10 years ago at a church retreat, both of us grinning, arms around each other's shoulders. And brothers in Christ, we'd called ourselves. I set it face down on his desk. Trevor looked up from his computer. Marcus, what's... I threw the DNA results on his desk. He stared at them. Didn't pick them up. Just stared. And I watched his face go through every stage. Confusion, recognition, calculation, decision. Marcus, he said finally, let me explain. Explain. My voice sounded dead even to my own ears. You're going to explain how you got my wife pregnant. It's not... He stopped, started again. We didn't mean for this to happen. You didn't mean for it to happen. I felt something cold settling in my chest. Rage, maybe. Or something beyond rage. You're my best friend, Trevor. 20 years. You were my best man. You baptized my daughter. I know. He stood up, came around the desk, tried to touch my shoulder. I stepped back. Don't. Trevor's hands dropped. He looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not shame, not really, more like inconvenience. Marcus, listen. Kate and I, we fell in love. These things happen. I never wanted to hurt you, but you did it anyway. Yes. His voice got stronger now, more confident. Yes, because love doesn't follow rules, Marcus. It doesn't follow plans. It just happens. I stared at him. This man I'd known for 2 decades, this man who preached about faithfulness last night while his illegitimate child grew in my wife's belly. You preached about faithfulness, I said. Last night, you stood in that pulpit and preached about keeping promises before God. That's my job. Your job, I felt something crack inside me. Your job is to lie, to stand in front of 300 people and preach about integrity while you're sleeping with your deacon's wife? Trevor's jaw tightened. Don't make this ugly, Marcus. I didn't make it ugly. You did. You and Kate. Silence. The clock on Trevor's wall ticked. Outside, a cardinal sang in the garden. Normal sounds. The world continuing like nothing had changed. What do you want me to say? Trevor asked finally. I pulled out my phone, showed him the church ledger photo I'd taken. Line item 247, suite 412, 4,800. I want you to explain why the church paid for your hotel room in April, the one you shared with Kate. Trevor's face went pale. I kept every receipt, Trevor, every single one, including the ones you thought you'd hidden. Marcus? How long? I asked. How long have you been sleeping with my wife? He didn't answer, looked away. How long? 18 months, he said quietly. It started after the Christmas Eve service, last year. We were planning the youth retreat and we just connected. 18 months, a year and a half, while I'd been working 80-hour weeks to keep the church budget balanced, while I'd been serving communion beside him, while I'd been trusting him with everything. You're a good man, Marcus, Trevor said. His voice had changed now, softer, manipulative. I recognized the tone. It was his counseling voice, the one he used with difficult congregants. You'll forgive us. That's what you do. You're a Christian. You believe in forgiveness. We can work through this. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw him clearly for the first time in 20 years. You're right, I said. I forgive people. I believe in redemption. I believe in grace. Trevor's shoulders relaxed. Then we can. But I don't lie, and I won't let my daughter believe a lie, and I won't serve communion beside a man who counted on my goodness to cover his sins. Trevor's face hardened. Marcus, think about what you're doing. Think about Sophia. Think about the church. Do you really want to blow this up? Destroy everything? I'm not the one who destroyed it. The church council meets next week, Trevor said. His voice had gone cold, professional. There's been some concern about your performance lately, about your handling of the budget, about your stability. I felt ice in my veins. Is that a threat? It's reality. You're clearly under stress. Everyone's noticed. Maybe you need some time off for your mental health. He was going to do it. He was going to frame me as unstable, get me voted out before I could expose the truth. I picked up the DNA results from his desk, folded them carefully, precisely, the way I did everything. You made a mistake, Trevor, I said. You counted on me being too good to fight back. You counted on me being too Christian to make this public. You counted on my forgiveness. I walked to the door, stopped, turned back. But you forgot something. I kept every receipt. And receipts don't forgive. They just tell the truth. Kate was home when I got there, standing in the kitchen making coffee. The morning light streamed through the window, catching in her dark hair. She looked beautiful. She'd always been beautiful. I'd fallen in love with her 22 years ago at a church picnic. She'd been wearing a yellow sundress and laughing at something her friend said. I'd thought, I'm going to marry that woman, and I had. Now she stood in our kitchen, carrying another man's child, and looked at me with empty eyes. You talk to Trevor, she said. Not a question. I set my keys on the counter, that simple domestic gesture. Keys on the counter, like any other morning. Yes. And And I know everything. Kate poured her coffee, added cream, stirred. The spoon clinked against the ceramic mug. Such a normal sound. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I filed for divorce this morning. Dan's handling it." Dan Park was my brother-in-law, a divorce attorney. I'd called him at 7 a.m. Kate nodded slowly. "I expected that. That's all you have to say?" She turned to face me. "What do you want me to say, Marcus? That I'm sorry? I'm not. That I made a mistake? I didn't. I stopped loving you 5 years ago. Trevor makes me feel alive. You make me feel managed." The word hit like a slap. Managed. "Yes, like I'm another line item in your precious ledger. Wife. Check. Church duties. Check. Perfect family. Check." She set down her coffee cup hard enough that liquid sloshed over the rim. "You know what Trevor gives me? Attention, passion. He actually sees me instead of just checking boxes." I stared at her. This woman I'd shared 22 years with. Who'd I'd built a life with. Who'd worn my grandmother's ring and promised before God to love me. "I worked," I said quietly. "I worked to provide for us, for you and Sophia. I worked to build a life where you could do what you loved, plan church events, coordinate weddings, work with the youth. I thought I was being a good husband." "You were being a good provider," Kate said. "There's a difference." Maybe she was right. Maybe I had been so focused on doing things right that I'd forgotten to feel them. But that didn't excuse what she'd done, what they'd done. "The baby," I said. "Trevor's baby. What's your plan?" "I'm keeping it. Trevor and Eleanor, they can't have children. He's always wanted to be a father. So you're giving him my wife and a baby. Convenient." Kate's eyes flashed. "Don't play the victim, Marcus. You weren't present. You were never really here." I pulled out my phone, showed her the church ledger photo, Suite 412, for the $800. "You used church funds for your affair. That's embezzlement, Kate." Her face went white. "That was Trevor's card. He used church money to pay for hotel rooms where he had sex with his deacon's wife. That's not just adultery, that's fraud. You wouldn't. I would. I will. Because this isn't just about us anymore. It's about Sophia. It's about 300 families who trust us. It's about every person who tithes to that church, thinking their money goes to God's work, not to Trevor's affair." Kate grabbed her wedding binder from the counter. White leather, gold letters, blessed unions. 3 inches thick with fabric samples and venue photos. She slammed it down. "You want to know what's ironic, Marcus? I plan weddings. I coordinate these beautiful celebrations of love. And the whole time, I was trapped in a marriage that felt like a business arrangement. Then you should have divorced me, not cheated on me. Maybe," she picked up her purse, "my lawyer will be in touch. And Marcus, if you try to humiliate me by making this public, if you try to destroy me at church, I'll tell Sophia you've lost your mind, that you're having a breakdown, that you're making accusations because you can't handle stress. She'll believe me. She always does." She walked out. The door closed behind her with a soft click. I stood in our kitchen, the one with the counters I'd installed myself, the backsplash Kate had picked out, the coffee maker we'd gotten as a wedding gift, and realized my marriage hadn't ended today. It had ended 5 years ago. I'd just been too busy keeping receipts to notice. I called Pastor Ruth McAllister that afternoon. Ruth was the associate pastor. 58 years old, wise in the way people get when they've lived through their own betrayals. She'd joined Grace Lutheran 3 years ago, and I'd trusted her instinctively. Now I was going to find out if that trust was misplaced. We met in her office, smaller than Trevor's, but warmer. Plants on the windowsill, photos of her grandchildren, a well-worn Bible on her desk. "Marcus," she said gently, "talk to me." I handed her the DNA results. She read them, closed her eyes. "Oh, Marcus, I'm so sorry." "You knew," I said. It wasn't a question. "I suspected." Ruth set the papers down. "For about 6 months, I saw them together at a prayer breakfast, the way they looked at each other. I told myself I was imagining things." "You didn't say anything." "No." She looked at me, her eyes sad. "And that was wrong. I should have. I should have come to you, or confronted Trevor, or something. I was a coward, Marcus. I'm sorry." At least she was honest. At least she wasn't pretending. "Trevor's planning to have me removed," I said. "Church council vote next week. He's going to claim I'm unstable." Ruth's jaw tightened. Over my dead body. He's the senior pastor, and I'm the associate pastor with a vote on that council. So is your sister-in-law, Marie. So are 15 other people who've known you for years. Ruth leaned forward. Marcus, the truth will set you free, but first, it's going to hurt like hell. I almost smiled. Ruth didn't usually curse, even mild ones. What do you need? She asked. Evidence, more than just DNA results. I need proof that this has been going on, that he used church funds, that this isn't just a personal issue, it's a breach of his pastoral duties. Ruth pulled out her phone. Jennifer in IT has been waiting for someone to ask her about the email server records. The what? The church email server. We back up everything automatically, including deleted emails. Ruth's smile was grim. Trevor's been deleting his sent messages, but he forgot about the server backups. Jennifer noticed months ago there were gaps in his email trail that didn't make sense. She can access them. She already has. She's been keeping copies, waiting for someone to ask the right questions. Ruth stood. Give me an hour. I'll get them for you. I felt something unfamiliar rising in my chest. Hope, maybe, or at least the hope of justice. Ruth, why are you helping me? She touched my shoulder. Because you're right. This isn't just personal. Trevor betrayed his vows to God, to this congregation, to you. And if I stay silent now, I'm complicit. She squeezed my shoulder. Besides, I kept every receipt too, Marcus. It's what good administrators do. If you were me, if you had the evidence, if your daughter was about to be told lies about you, would you expose the truth publicly at the church council? Or would you handle it quietly, behind closed doors, to protect your daughter from public scandal? I had to decide, but first, I needed more evidence. That night, I used my church master keyring to access Trevor's office after hours. The brass keys jangled in my hand as I unlocked his door. 12 keys of different sizes, the largest an old skeleton key to the sanctuary. The leather fob was embossed with my name, Deacon Brennan. The keys that represented trust now unlocked betrayal. Trevor's office was dark. I didn't turn on the lights, just used my phone flashlight, searched his desk drawers, filing cabinet, bookshelf, found it in the bottom drawer under a stack of sermon notes, an iPhone 8 in a rose gold case, cracked screen protector. Not Trevor's regular phone. He had the newest model, kept it in his pocket always. This was a burner phone, a secret. I turned it on. The screen glowed that greenish white that cheap phones have. There was one voicemail, saved, the rest deleted. I pressed play. Trevor's voice came through the tiny speaker, tinny and hollow, but unmistakably him. Kate, I can't keep lying during sermons about faithfulness while we're, God forgive me. I love you. I love you more than I've loved Eleanor in years. When the baby comes, we'll figure it out. Maybe Marcus will step aside. He's always been too good for his own good. The recording had traffic sounds in the background. He'd called from his car. His voice cracked on the word lying. You could hear real anguish there, real conflict. But he'd done it anyway. I played the message 3 times. Each time, the words got worse. He's always been too good for his own good. They'd counted on my goodness. They'd weaponized my faith. They'd used my integrity against me. I saved the recording to my phone, photographed the message timestamp, put the phone back exactly where I'd found it. As I was leaving, I saw the wedding photo on Trevor's desk, the one of us at the retreat, arms around each other. I'd set it face down this morning. Someone had propped it back up. I took my father's silver cross from around my neck, the Celtic knots, the continuous loops. I'd worn it through this whole nightmare, touching it during prayers, during confrontations, during sleepless nights. I set it on Trevor's desk beside our photo. Let him wonder what it meant. Eleanor Hartwell was waiting for me in the church parking lot the next evening. She must have been watching from my car. As soon as I pulled in, she walked over, moving quickly despite the darkness. Marcus, she said, I need to talk to you. We sat in my car. Eleanor was 41, thin, always perfectly put together. Tonight she looked haggard. I know, she said without preamble, about Trevor and Catherine. I've known for months. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. You've known? He told me 3 months ago, during couples therapy. He confessed, said he needed to be honest. Eleanor's laugh was bitter. The therapist praised his courage, his honesty, like he deserved a medal for admitting he'd been sleeping with my friend's wife. Why didn't you leave, tell someone, expose him? Eleanor looked at me, and her eyes were hard. Because I was afraid of losing my marriage, afraid of what people would think, afraid of being alone at 41. She pulled a stack of papers from her purse. But watching you serve communion last Wednesday, holding that envelope, Marcus, I can't be a coward anymore. She handed me the papers. 2-inch stack of printed emails. Standard printer paper, but highlighted in yellow and pink. Dated from January 2024 through last week. I asked Jennifer for the server records 3 days ago, Eleanor said. I told her I was organizing Trevor's correspondence. She printed everything, including all the emails he thought he'd deleted. I flipped through them, email after email, Trevor to Kate, Kate to Trevor, planning meetings that were really trysts, counseling sessions that were affair cover stories, hotel reservations, love notes disguised as church business. The paper stack made a substantial thunk when I set it on my lap. The pages fluttered, that distinctive sound of printed evidence. There's more, Eleanor said. The hotel rooms. Trevor charged them to his church credit card, then filed expense reports claiming they were for counseling retreats, pastoral care, ministry expenses. She pulled out another sheet. $12,000 over 18 months. That's embezzlement, Marcus. $12,000. Church funds. Money people tithed thinking it would feed the hungry, house the homeless, spread the gospel. Instead, it paid for Trevor's affair. Why are you giving this to me? I asked. Eleanor's hands were shaking. Because Trevor came home last night and told me his plan. He's going to have you voted out as deacon. He's going to tell the council you're unstable, that you've been mismanaging funds, that you need mental health support. He's going to destroy your reputation before you can destroy his. And you're going to let me stop him. I'm going to help you stop him. Eleanor's voice was steel now. Trevor used my silence as a weapon. He counted on me being too ashamed, too afraid to speak up. But I'm done being silent. Take them down, Marcus. Both of them. Use these emails, present them to the council. Show everyone who Trevor really is. I looked at the stack of papers in my lap. 18 months of lies, printed on ordinary paper, but they weighed 1,000 pounds. Your marriage, I started, is over, Eleanor finished. I'm filing for divorce next week. Trevor can have his pregnant girlfriend and his precious authenticity. I'll have my self-respect. She got out of the car, stopped, turned back. I stayed silent because I was afraid, she said. Don't make my mistake, Marcus. Tell the truth, even when it costs everything, especially then. She walked to her car, drove away. I sat in the parking lot with a stack of emails, a recording of Trevor's confession, DNA results, and church ledger evidence. Some of you said truth, some said quiet. I get both sides, but here's what I realized. Quiet was what they counted on. My silence was their weapon. I wasn't going to be quiet anymore. Friday night. Sophia called. I was in my home office organizing evidence for the church council meeting on Tuesday. I had everything laid out. DNA results, emails, Trevor's voicemail recording, credit card statements showing hotel charges. My phone rang. Sophia's name lit up the screen. Hey, sweetheart, I answered. Dad? Her voice was shaking, crying. Dad, what's going on? My heart dropped. What do you mean? Mom called. She said you're accusing her of horrible things. She said you're having some kind of breakdown, that you need help. She said you've been acting paranoid, saying crazy things about her and Uncle Trevor. I closed my eyes. Kate had made her move. Dad, please, Sophia was sobbing now. Please tell me Mom's wrong. Tell me you're not, that you're okay. I looked at the baptismal gown in its cedar box on my shelf. 4 generations. Sophia had been so excited to see the baby wear it. I looked at the DNA results on my desk. 0.0% excluded. I took the silver cross from my drawer. I'd retrieved it from Trevor's office this afternoon. The metal was cold in my palm. Sophia, I said carefully, I need you to come home this weekend. There's something you need to know. What? What is it? Not over the phone, sweetheart. This needs to be in person. Dad, you're scaring me. I know. I'm sorry. But I promise you, I'm not having a breakdown. I'm not paranoid. I'm just... My voice cracked. I'm telling the truth, and the truth is hard. What truth? How do you tell your daughter that her mother is a lie? That the man she calls Uncle Trevor betrayed everything? That the baby she's been excited about isn't her sibling? Come home tomorrow, I said. Please, Sophia, come home. Silence on the other end, then, Okay, I'll come home. But Dad, whatever's going on, we'll figure it out, right? We'll fix it. Some things can't be fixed, baby girl. Some things can only be survived. We'll talk tomorrow, I promised. I love you. I love you too, Dad. She hung up. I sat in my office alone, the DNA results on my desk, the emails in a neat stack. The recording queued up on my phone, all the evidence I needed to destroy Trevor's reputation, vindicate myself, and protect the church. But to do it, I'd have to tell Sophia the truth. I'd have to watch my daughter's face as she realized her mother had lied. Her godfather had betrayed us. Her entire understanding of family was a fiction. I picked up my father's cross, the Celtic knotwork, continuous loops with no beginning and no end. God doesn't test us, my father used to say. People do. Tomorrow, Sophia would learn that lesson the hard way, and I would be the one who taught it to her. Saturday afternoon, Sophia sat across from me in Pastor Ruth's office. Afternoon light streamed through the stained glass windows, casting colored patterns across the floor, red and gold and blue. The same windows I'd looked at for 27 years, the same light. But nothing was the same. Ruth sat beside Sophia, her hand ready but not touching. Supportive presence, witness to what I was about to do. I slid the DNA results across Ruth's desk. Sophia looked at the paper, then at me. What is this? Read it, sweetheart. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. I watched her eyes scan the medical terminology, the numbers, the highlighted conclusion. Watched the moment comprehension hit. Her mouth opened, no sound came out. Probability of paternity, 0.00%, she read aloud. Her voice was barely a whisper. Marcus David Brennan is excluded as the biological father. She looked up at me. Dad, no, this is a mistake. The lab made a mistake. They didn't. But Mom wouldn't. Her voice broke. Uncle Trevor couldn't. I pulled out my phone, opened the voicemail recording, set the phone on Ruth's desk between us. Before you listen to this, I said gently, I need you to know something. I love you. That will never change, but you asked me to tell you the truth. So I'm going to. I pressed play. Trevor's voice filled the small office. Tinny through the phone speaker, but unmistakably him. Kate, I can't keep lying during sermons about faithfulness while we're, God forgive me, I love you. I love you more than I've loved Eleanor in years. When the baby comes, we'll figure it out. Maybe Marcus will step aside. He's always been too good for his own good. Sophia's face went white. She stared at the phone like it was a snake. When the recording ended, the silence was absolute. Sophia, I started. No. She stood up so fast, her chair scraped backward. No, you're lying. You edited that somehow. I pulled out the email server records, set them on the desk. 2 inches of printed evidence. I wish I was lying, baby girl. God, I wish I was. Sophia grabbed the stack, started reading. Email after email, hotel reservations, love notes, 18 months of documented deception. Her hands shook harder with each page. Mom and Uncle Trevor, she whispered. How long? 18 months. And the baby is Trevor's. She looked at me, and I saw my daughter's entire world collapsing. Everything she'd believed about family, about faith, about the people she trusted most. Daddy, no. Mom wouldn't. Uncle Trevor wouldn't. The words dissolved into sobbing. Who am I supposed to believe in? I stood, moved around the desk, knelt in front of her chair, took her hands. Me, baby girl, always me. I will never lie to you. She collapsed forward, and I caught her, held her while she cried. Her shoulders shook against my chest, and I stroked her hair the way I had when she was 5 years old and scraped her knee. Some hurts don't heal that easy. Pastor Ruth's hand rested on both our shoulders. Sophia, she said softly, your father has shown incredible courage. He could have stayed silent, could have let this go. But he chose truth, even knowing it would hurt. Sophia pulled back, wiping her eyes. What happens now? Tuesday night, I said. Church council meeting. I'm presenting all the evidence. Trevor will have to answer for what he's done. And Mom? Filing for divorce. Dan's handling it. Sophia looked at the DNA results again. The silver cross around my neck caught the colored light from the stained glass. Your grandfather's cross, she said. I took it off. The chain was warm from my body heat. The silver cross heavy in my palm. 40 years my father had worn it. 27 years I'd worn it through my own hard truths. Grandpa wore this through hard truths, I said, fastening it around Sophia's neck. I wore it through harder ones. Now it's yours. She touched the Celtic knotwork, the continuous loops. What does it mean? It means we survived, sweetheart. We survived by telling the truth. And now, you'll carry that forward. Sophia held the cross in her palm, and fresh tears fell. I feel like I don't know anything anymore. Who do I trust? How do I... You trust the people who show up, I said. With truth, not comfortable lies. Truth. Ruth squeezed Sophia's shoulder. Your father's right, and you're not alone in this. I'll be here. Your Aunt Marie will be here. The congregation, when they learn what happened, they'll rally around you both. What about the baby? Sophia asked. Trevor and Eleanor want it, I said. Eleanor's filing for divorce too, but they've agreed to custody arrangements. The baby will be loved, Sophia. That's what matters. Sophia looked at me for a long moment. You're really going to stand up Tuesday night, in front of everyone, and tell them? Yes. That's going to be so hard. The truth usually is. She hugged me again, tighter this time. I'm proud of you, Dad. I'm so proud of you. Those words, from my daughter, after everything she'd just learned, those words were worth every sleepless night, every moment of doubt, every fear I'd had about telling her. We sat in Ruth's office until the colored light faded to dusk, made plans for Tuesday, talked through what would happen, what I'd say, how the council would respond. And when we finally left, Sophia wore my father's cross around her neck. The Brennan legacy, not broken, just passed to someone who had earned it. Tuesday night, November 1st. The church council chamber was full, 75 members present, seated in curved rows facing the front table, where Trevor and I sat on opposite ends. Pastor Ruth sat in the center, officially mediating. The room smelled like old wood and anxiety. People shifted in their seats, whispered to each other. They knew something was wrong. The emergency meeting notice had been vague, but urgent. Trevor wore his pastor's robes, looked calm, confident, prepared. He'd spent the last 3 days telling council members privately that I was having a breakdown, that he was concerned about my mental health, that this meeting was really an intervention. I wore a simple suit, dark blue. My father's cross, no, Sophia's cross now, would have been at my throat, but I'd given it to my daughter. Instead, I wore nothing, no symbols, just truth. The leather-bound church ledger sat on the table in front of me. Burgundy leather, gold-embossed cross. The binding cracked when I'd opened it earlier, that familiar sound. 27 years I'd kept this ledger. Tonight it would speak for itself. Ruth called the meeting to order. This emergency session has been called by Deacon Marcus Brennan regarding matters of church governance and pastoral conduct. Marcus, you have the floor. I stood, 75 pairs of eyes on me. I'm going to tell you a story, I said, and I'm going to show you evidence. And when I'm done, you'll have a decision to make about the future of Grace Lutheran Church. Trevor's jaw tightened, but he stayed quiet. I opened the ledger, turned it, so the council could see line item 247, April 15th through 17th, 2025, Youth Leadership Counseling Retreat, 12 attendees, budget allocation, $4,800. I pulled out the credit card statement, but there were only 5 hotel rooms booked. The 6th charge, Suite 412 at Mountain View Lodge, was a single room, king bed, charged to the church credit card. Murmurs through the room. I've kept every receipt for 8 years as your financial administrator, I continued. Every single one, including the ones some people thought were hidden. I spread hotel receipts across the table. April, June, August, September. 12 trips over 18 months. These represent $12,000 in church funds, $12,000 of your tithes, your offerings. Money you gave, thinking it would feed the hungry, house the homeless, spread the gospel. I looked at Trevor. Instead, it paid for hotel rooms, for an affair. The murmurs got louder. Trevor stood. "Marcus is clearly unwell," Trevor said smoothly. "This is exactly the kind of paranoid behavior I've been concerned about. He's been under tremendous stress." I pulled out the DNA results, held them up. "My wife is 8 months pregnant," I said. My voice was steady, cold. "I received these test results last Wednesday. Probability of paternity, 0%. The baby isn't mine." Gasps, shocked faces. Eleanor Hartwell sat in the second row, her face carefully blank. She'd known this was coming. "You're accusing Catherine of—" Trevor started. "I'm not accusing. I'm stating biological fact." I handed the DNA results to Ruth, who passed them to the council members in the front row. "The baby is not mine, and I have evidence, extensive evidence, of who the father is." I pulled out the email server records. The 2-inch stack made a substantial thunk when I set it on the table. 18 months of emails between Pastor Trevor Hartwell and my wife, Catherine Brennan, all supposedly deleted, all backed up automatically on our church server. I flipped to a highlighted page, read aloud. "Meet me at the Mountain View Thursday. Marcus will be at the diocese conference. We'll have 2 days." That's from June 2024. I flipped to another page. "I can't wait until this baby is born and we can be together. Eleanor suspects, but she won't leave. Marcus is too trusting to ever figure it out." That's from September. Page after page, evidence after evidence. The council members sat in stunned silence. "You're fabricating this," Trevor said, but his voice had lost its confidence. "You've edited those emails, created fake documents." I pulled out my phone, set it on the table, opened the voicemail recording. "This is a message from the phone I found in your office, Trevor. The phone hidden under your sermon notes, the one you thought no one knew about." I pressed play. Trevor's voice filled the council chamber. 75 people heard it. "Kate, I can't keep lying during sermons about faithfulness while we're, God forgive me. I love you. I love you more than I've loved Eleanor in years. When the baby comes, we'll figure it out. Maybe Marcus will step aside. He's always been too good for his own good." Complete silence. Then Trevor stood, pushed back his chair. The scrape of wood against wood echoed in the chamber. He walked out. Didn't say a word, didn't look back. Just walked out of the council chamber, out of the church, and never came back. Eleanor stood, spoke into the silence. "I can verify everything Marcus has presented. I've known about the affair for 3 months. Trevor confessed to me in couples therapy." Her voice was shaking but clear. "I stayed silent out of shame, out of fear. I won't be silent anymore." Ruth looked at the council members. "I move for an immediate vote on Pastor Hartwell's status." "Seconded," said Dan Park from the back row. The vote was unanimous. Trevor James Hartwell was removed as senior pastor of Grace Lutheran Church, effective immediately. His credentials would be reported to the Lutheran Diocese for revocation. Then Ruth turned to me. "And regarding Deacon Brennan's position?" "I vote to retain," Eleanor said immediately. "Marcus has shown nothing but integrity throughout this nightmare." "Seconded," said Marie, Dan's wife. Another vote, another unanimous decision. I would keep my position, keep my keys, keep serving the church that had raised me. The meeting adjourned. People came up to me, some crying, some angry, all shocked, hugged me, told me they were sorry, told me they'd suspected something was wrong, told me I was brave. I just felt tired. But when I walked out of that church council chamber, I walked out as myself, not as the man people thought I should be, not as the good Christian who stayed silent about sin, as myself. Someone who kept every receipt. Someone who told the truth, even when it cost everything. 8 weeks later, Christmas Eve, the church was full, 300 people, maybe more. Every pew packed with families in their Christmas best. The sanctuary smelled like pine from the wreaths on every window, candles burning at the altar, perfume and cologne and humanity. The organ played softly. A new organist, Eleanor had resigned her position and moved to Columbia to be near her sister. But she'd kept custody of the baby. Trevor had visitation rights, but Eleanor was the primary parent. The baby, a boy, born healthy on November 20th, would grow up knowing his father, but raised by a mother who'd chosen integrity over convenience. Trevor's clergy credentials had been revoked. He'd left Charleston. Last I heard, he was working in construction in Georgia. Some falls are steep. Kate had moved too. California, she'd said. A fresh start. She'd signed the divorce papers without contest, relinquished custody claims. Sophia hadn't spoken to her since that day in Ruth's office. Maybe someday they'd reconcile. Maybe not. That wasn't my decision to make. Tonight I stood at the altar in my deacon's robes. Sophia stood beside me, home from Clemson for Christmas break, wearing a deep green dress that matched her eyes. My father's silver cross hung around her neck, catching the candlelight. Ruth stood at the pulpit. The church had named her interim senior pastor while they searched for Trevor's replacement. She was preaching about light in darkness, hope in despair, truth in a world of comfortable lies. I looked out at the congregation, saw faces I'd known for decades, saw Jennifer Martinez in the third row with her family, saw Dan and Marie Park, saw members of the church council who'd voted to keep me, saw an empty pew near the back where Trevor used to sit. Some absences are loud. The leather-bound church ledger sat on the altar table beside me. I'd brought it tonight, not for the budget. That was complete, balanced. All the embezzled funds recovered from Trevor's accounts. I'd brought it because Pastor Ruth had asked me to make a brief statement during the service about rebuilding trust. When it was time, I stepped to the pulpit. The ledger felt heavy in my hands. All those years of records, all those receipts. I've kept this ledger for 8 years, I said to the congregation. My voice was steady. I kept every receipt, every expense, every donation. It's what I do. It's who I am. I opened the ledger, turned to the last page of entries. But tonight, I want to show you something. I held up the ledger so people could see. This is the last page of 2025, and after that, blank pages. Pages waiting to be filled. I ran my hand across the empty cream paper, the texture smooth under my fingertips. I kept every receipt, I said, but some pages are meant to stay blank, new chapters, written in truth instead of lies, built on foundation that won't crack when the wind blows. I closed the ledger, the binding cracked, that familiar sound. This church has been my family since I was 15 years old. It raised me when I had no one. It gave me purpose, community, faith. I looked at the congregation. Some of that faith was tested this year, broken even, but what remains is stronger because it's built on truth. Sophia touched my arm, squeezed gently. God doesn't test us, I said. People do. And when we survive those tests, when we choose truth over comfort, integrity over convenience, we become who we were meant to be all along. I stepped back from the pulpit. Ruth nodded at me, eyes bright with unshed tears. The service continued. Carols were sung. The Christmas story was read. Communion was served. Sophia and I stood together at the altar, offering bread and wine. Body of Christ, blood of Christ. This time, when I said the words, they were true. After the service, people lingered, the way they do on Christmas Eve when no one wants the magic to end. Children ran through the sanctuary, wired on sugar and excitement. Adults talked in clusters, planned post-Christmas gatherings, made plans for the new year. Sophia and I stood near the altar, watching. "You okay, Dad?" she asked. I looked at her. My daughter, 20 years old now, studying psychology at Clemson, planning to be a counselor. She'd told me last week she wanted to work with kids from broken families. Kids who needed someone to tell them the truth, even when it hurt. She was wearing my father's cross. The silver caught the candlelight, made patterns on the wall behind her. "Yeah, sweetheart, I'm okay." "Really? Really?" And I meant it. "We're smaller, the family, the circle, but we're real." "Real is better than fake," Sophia said. Every time, the church bells began to ring. 10 o'clock. The sound echoed through Charleston, that deep bronze note carrying across the historic district, telling everyone within earshot that it was Christmas. Marcus and Sophia redefined what family means that Christmas Eve. Not who you're born to, but who shows up, with truth. If you've built your own chosen family through hard times, through betrayal, through loss, tell me about them in the comments. I want to hear your stories. And if this story moved you, subscribe. I tell stories about faith, betrayal, and the courage to choose truth over comfort. These are real moments that test who we really are. I'll see you in the next one. The congregation began filing out. Sophia and I stayed, helping Ruth blow out candles, straighten hymnals, turn off lights. The ledger sat on the altar table where I had left it. I picked it up, opened it to that blank page again. Sophia looked over my shoulder. "What are you going to write there?" "I don't know yet. That's the beautiful part. It gets to be true. Whatever we write next, it gets to be true." She hugged me. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too, baby girl." We walked out of the church together. The cold December air hit us, crisp and clean. Charleston Christmas lights glowed on every street. Somewhere, people were having parties, opening presents, living their lives. We'd lived through ours, survived, more than survived. We'd come out the other side with our integrity intact. I touched the leather ledger under my arm, all those receipts, all that evidence, all those years of meticulous record-keeping that had seemed boring, obsessive, unnecessary, until it wasn't. "I kept every receipt," I said quietly, to myself, to Sophia, to the cold December night. Every single one. Sophia smiled, touched the silver cross at her throat. "And now we get to keep the good ones, the true ones." "Yeah," I said. "We do." We got in the car, drove home through Christmas Eve Charleston traffic. Our house, the one with the front porch I'd rebuilt, the one where 22 years of marriage had unraveled and been rebuilt into something else, glowed with lights Sophia had insisted on hanging. Inside, the baptismal gown sat in its cedar box on the mantel. Sophia had placed it there last week, along with a note, "For my children, when the time is right, when the truth is solid." The phone buzzed, a text from Eleanor. "Merry Christmas, Marcus. The baby smiled today. Really smiled? Thought you'd want to know." I texted back, "Merry Christmas, Eleanor. Give him a hug from his Uncle Marcus." Because that's what I was now. Uncle Marcus, not dad, not father, but someone who'd make sure that little boy grew up knowing the truth about where he came from, knowing he was loved, knowing that sometimes families are messy and complicated and broken. But knowing that truth, even difficult truth, is always better than a beautiful lie. Sophia made hot chocolate. We sat on the couch, watching the Christmas tree lights blink, not talking much, just being together, father and daughter, what was left of the Brennan family. It was enough, more than enough. It was real. And at the end of the longest, hardest year of my life, real was the best Christmas present I could have asked for. I looked at my daughter. She looked back at me. The silver cross caught the tree lights. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart." "Merry Christmas, Dad." Outside, church bells rang across Charleston. New chapters waiting to be written, blank pages ready for truth. We'd survived the storm. Now we got to build whatever came next, together, in the light, with nothing left to hide.